All right. All right. We are live. We are live. A little later than normal. A little later than normal. A little day off. A little later. Hopefully everybody's all right with that. It is a Saturday, so maybe some people. Oh, there's like a bad echo. Are you hearing that?
I heard it. It was mine. I turned it down.
Oh, it was okay. Yeah,
Yeah,
you're
yeah, yeah.
listening through the phone.
It
Okay,
went
got
live
it.
on my phone. Yeah.
All right. I was like, that was way after I said
Yeah.
that. Okay. Yeah. So let a couple people trickle in here, and then we'll get started. But yeah, a little later. What came up? What was it that yesterday we just said we just didn't really feel like it or something? Oh, no,
It was late. Yeah.
I was
Busy.
on the phone. I was on
Yeah.
the phone with about five different people all through the evening last night about some friend of the family going through some things, and I was talking to some different people. So anyway, back at it today, and then of course tonight we're like, let's do 8 o'clock, and then 8 o'clock starts rolling around, and like my son won't go to sleep, and your kids are doing
It's
something.
it's the life of a dad.
Home alone with dad, right? You're trying to
Yeah.
get it figured out. Hopefully it all cooperates and everything. But anyway, all right, here we go. We'll get it started right here. This was Chris's question to get us started. So maybe you have like a premeditated answer. I don't know, but we'll find out. What is more likely, Bigfoot or aliens, and why?
Well, yeah. I mean, I already have the answer to this. Obviously, it's
I know where you're. I know where you're going.
Well, the backstory is, well, I don't know that I need to go into all of that. I'm an aliens guy, 100%. Whether however deep you want to go into it, I'm fairly certain aliens exist. And when it comes to aliens or Bigfoot, I mean, I gotta believe, like, even though there's a lot of wilderness out there, like the Pacific Northwest, things can hide. I gotta believe at some point one would have slipped up here, maybe gotten hit by a truck or something, like somebody
would've slipped up.
Yeah, one would have got caught slipping trying to like get some food, steal some food from a campsite or something. So yeah, I mean, the universe is such a big place, and I believe aliens are out there.
That's what it comes down to for me. The universe is seriously like so expansive that we really can't even comprehend it. And you're right. Like if you've ever traveled, like my wife and I did a vacation a couple summers ago to Colorado, and I remember literally peeking. That's so funny that you brought this question up out of nowhere, and I didn't know we were going to go this route. But immediately I had this thought of flashing back to that vacation we were on, and then we were standing up on some mountain that we were kind of hiking, climbing, and I looked out, and there was just like you said, wilderness, just mountains
Yeah.
and forests and just everywhere. I'm like, there's got to be something out there that we don't know about, like a Bigfoot or like a whatever the hell you want to call it, or some creature that we've never seen before. But then you compare that to like the possibilities of what the universe is, and it's not even a speck. So I agree, man. I've never really had like a weird experience myself when it comes to aliens, but my dad, who was like super old school and just not really like a big time like believer in far fetched stuff. He's just pretty grounded. He swears on his life that he saw an alien vessel when he was like in his early 20s, late at night, coming back from a work trip. So,
Same
know.
with my wife. Same with my wife. When
Yeah.
I've never experienced anything like that, but my wife, and she's not even really one that's like, she's not really into that kind of thing. Like, she's not a sci-fi person.
Yeah.
Like, she doesn't like some of the stuff I watch on History Channel, like Ancient Aliens. If anybody out there watching this right now is an Ancient Alien fan, shout out to you, because it's a phenomenal show. I'm not going to get off, onto a tangent about it, but she claims when she was younger, she saw something in the sky, and it definitely wasn't an airplane. Something spinning or glowing or whatever it was, and she's quite certain it was a ship. So.
Yeah. So I mean, I think I'd be surprised if many people said Bigfoot was more likely. I'm willing to get on board with both of them being maybe possible, but if it's one or the other, it's aliens.
You know
It's
what's great
aliens all
though?
day.
Like there's several hunting Bigfoot shows that are out there, and I watch a lot of those. And like before, like right when you're going into it, you already know how it's going to end. Like they don't find it. They
I
never
say
find
that
it.
so my wife is real big on like the paranormal activity shows, and like they're pretty cool to watch. You catch some stuff on camera.
Yeah.
And the hunting Bigfoot one is another, like finding Loch Ness. I'm like, gee, I wonder how this ends. It's like, what the hell? Like, yeah, is it? I think isn't there like multiple seasons of the Finding Bigfoot thing?
Dude,
So
I
I'm
think
like, who watches this?
Yeah.
You know the ending.
it's me. I'm the guy. I'm the guy that watches it. I can't help myself. I know how it ends, but still, I'm interested. So.
That is fantastic. All right, let's get into some Michigan stuff, man. You and I spent all day at Ferris State University, your old stomping grounds, up in Big Rapids, for the Michigan Football Showcase. Michigan's entire staff was there except for Matt Weiss. I think he was the only coach that wasn't there. And if he was there, I just didn't see him. I mean, maybe he was, but he was at a camp earlier in the week. Maybe he had something to take care of back in Ann Arbor or whatever the case was. But Jim Harbaugh and 9 of his assistants were in Big Rapids at the camp and got to see a trio of commits, got to see a bunch of big-time targets, got to see a bunch of other coaches, a ton of high school coaches. I mean, like, I've been to a lot of these before, so I know that this is how they go, and there's a lot going on, and there's hundreds and hundreds of people. It was your first time, and I mean, almost off the bat, you were like, dude, this is pretty cool, man. Like, this is a cool thing. Just give a quick rundown of like what you kind of took in as we got there and as the day progressed.
Well, it was quite a bit different from what we experienced at Eastern, right? Eastern was, I don't know what day it was that we went up to or down to Eastern, I guess, from where I'm from. But that was a little bit slower. You couldn't get on the field. There weren't too many people there. And then you go up to Ferris and there's hundreds of kids. There's some big name recruits that are there. And of course you've got, the entire Michigan football coaching staff, like you said, minus Weiss. At least we didn't see him. Mm-hmm. But all these guys are kind of walking around, and Harbaugh's walking around and rubbing elbows with everybody. And it was just, I don't know, man, it was a cool experience. And it was, you can see why it's such a big deal for the coaches to be out there and to get that type of exposure, especially when, they're doing the whole meet and greet experience. Yeah. You could tell that that stuff was really good for recruiting. So it was cool to be a part of it. And it was cool to see some of the new coaching staff in person for the first time as well. And I think, I don't know, we talked about this a little bit, but man, Clinkscale is just he is one of those, like, he's just a cool guy. Like, you can tell when he walks into the area, there's a vibe, there's like a energy with him. I don't know what it is, but it's that thing you can't quite put your finger on, but he's got it. And I think we're very fortunate to have him in Ann Arbor. Yeah,
I put up a story today, part 1. Observations and recap. I was going to do the whole thing, and it just ended up being pretty long. And I'm like, I'm going to break this up into 2 parts because there were a lot of So I did the coaches and the commits. There were only 3 commits there: Will Johnson, Devontae Miles, and Tayshawn Trent, and 9 coaches, and then Harbaugh. So it was a pretty long write-up. And I was starting to get into the recruits a little bit. And I'm like, I'm going to break this up. So the recruit section will be tomorrow. The targets will be tomorrow. But that's exactly what I wrote about Clinkscale. I'm like, he's the coolest dude in the room. He's just got this like slow, like deliberate walk, like, head nods, and like he's like that cool ass uncle at the barbecue, man. Like he's just kind of walking through. And there wasn't one person that he went up to that didn't like laugh or smile or like bro hug him or whatever. He just had a vibe about him, and you could see it resonate with, like you said, with the recruits, with Will Johnson, with the other college coaches, with the high school coaches. It was just very, very noticeable that he has a presence, that he is going to do phenomenal things on the recruiting trail. And he's been in Detroit. Even though he was at Kentucky, Detroit's his stomping grounds, and you could see it. Every coach there knew who he was. Every coach there wanted to talk to him, and every kid there was excited to have a Michigan coach extending a hand and chopping it up with him. Even the ones that, and that was a cool thing I saw from him. Tons of kids that are going to get zero interest from Michigan. He didn't care. Yeah. He was with everybody, chopping it up, just a people person, and you could see that right away. Mike Hart, who I think is going to be really, really good for Michigan too. Very different. Very different approach. Business-like, man. Yeah. I mean, there was some smiling, there was some laughing, but he was straight-faced. He was focused.
Every photo I feel like we took of him was like, man, just stone cold, and it was like business,
But I personally think that is so good for a running back room. I feel like you kind of have to have that mentality, and from everything I've ever heard from anybody, they love the guy. It's not like he's not a jerk, even though he doesn't look like he's having a ton of fun. I think he's about his business. And I actually got the same sense from Mike McDonald as well. Another straight-faced guy, a lot of arms crossed, taking notes, keep an eye on things. Wasn't a lot of laughing and, joking around with people, but he was there, to do a job, to be on the job and to get some work done. And I thought that was really cool to see. Trying to think who else. Ron Bellamy, another guy that's new to the staff, a guy I've dealt with a lot, so I know a little bit more about him, but he's just so well respected in the area. Yeah. Anytime he's at an event in the state of Michigan, everybody's going to know who he is. Everybody respects the job that he's done, and he's going to be really good for recruiting in the state as well. Other new guy, I'm trying to think. Oh, George Hilo was there. I didn't
Hilo,
really
yeah.
get it's I felt like I was like just rewriting the story I wrote about when he got hired, but I didn't have like a major takeaway about him in either
Yeah,
direction. Like
we
he was
we
kind
we
of
saw him a couple times, and it was like he was very just an under the radar guy, and he might be
yeah.
phenomenal at what he does, but he didn't have that just that thing about him, like
Mm-hmm.
you could like I could tell with Clinkscale, like before he even got in the vicinity, when he was just off in the distance, you could just, I don't know, man, you could see
Mm-hmm.
something different about that dude, and didn't really get that with Hilo.
And I don't think that's a bad thing. I mean,
No.
that's not everybody's going to be like, hey, up in your face
Right.
type of guy. You're not going to have 10 coaches like that. So I don't think that's a bad thing at all. But in my write up, I was just kind of going back through the memories I had of Thursday's camp and thinking like, okay, what stood out about this guy? What was something specific I mentioned about him? What was something I realized? And I got to Hilo, and I'm like, I don't really have anything in that, but I was like, like you said, he might be really good at what he does in the meeting room and relaying messages to the players and teaching and all of that. So it's not a bad thing. And look, we were there. It's not like we sat down and had a one-on-one with the guy.
Right.
We're watching from a distance and we're observing what he's doing and we're kind of keeping an eye on him. But it wasn't the George Hilo show. I wasn't watching only him. So you're getting snapshots and bits and pieces of what the coaches are all about. But I agree with you. It's very, very obvious and right away noticeable with Clinkscale. Not so much with Hilo. With Hart and McDonald, you noticed something, but it was different.
Yeah.
And it is what it is. That's why you've got guys from different backgrounds, different ages, different experiences, and all that stuff. So it's what makes up a complete staff.
Can I say this though? Like you had asked me kind of what my thought was about the whole deal and being at that camp. Watching these guys, I really, really like this coaching staff, man. And you hear a lot about a different type of energy and how things feel different. And I'm not going to get too high on them, but my prediction of 9 wins, I feel more confident in that prediction after just watching the coaches out there. Even Harbaugh, he's dropped some weight. The guys seem more jovial. He's still doing the "who's got it better than us" routine, which
That was coming.
We'll get to that, but I mean, overall, I just like the makeup of this coaching staff more than I did in 2020.
I don't disagree. I'm going to put a comment up because I can sense it a little bit even in my own speaking. It sounds like we had some Kool-Aid this week. I don't think so. I was really high on Clinkscale when he was hired. I thought it was knocked it out of the park. Same thing with Mike Hart. Same thing with Ron Bellamy. Other than not having experience, I think he's a great personality, great kind of dude for being a college coach. He just hasn't done it before. And the same things I just said about George Hilo is what I said when he was hired and when I did a write-up on him. And the same things about Mike McDonald. Everything we heard was that he was a hard worker, really smart guy, but he's never done it before. I'm not.
Yeah.
Just because it looked like he was focused and doing a good job at a camp, I'm not really ready to say he's going to have a top 10 defense. I mean, like,
Right.
So I'm being a little tongue-in-cheek by saying, no, I don't care about any of the stuff I saw, but you do get a better sense of what these coaches are about when you see them in person. You see a little bit of their personality. You understand what their interactions are like.
I
feel
feel
it
like
was just a good experience.
I feel like I took a shot of the Kool-Aid. I'll go that far. I mean, watching the way Hart and Clinkscale and Bellamy interact with the recruits and these young kids, it just seems like there's a vibe there that may not have been there a year ago. They just they're far more relatable guys. They know how to relate to the kids that they're trying to get into Ann Arbor. And yeah, I'm not ashamed to admit that maybe I took a sip of the Kool-Aid this weekend.
Yeah, I don't know if I would go that far, and the reason why I say that is because I don't think what I saw changed my mind on anything.
Sure.
I mean, I'm still kind of thinking the same thing I thought initially. It was just a little bit more. It was firsthand instead of what I had heard about. I had heard all these great things about Clinkscale, and guess what? I saw it. I had heard pretty good things about Mike Hart and that he was no nonsense and that he was a hard ass, and I saw it. Hilo, I didn't know a lot about him. I still feel like I really don't. I mean, nothing really changed that much, but we've got some real stuff to talk about now, some firsthand observations, things that we took in on our own. So, yeah, I think we're going to be a little bit more informed and sound like we're talking about it with more energy because we can commit to it a little bit more. I will say this, too. Guys who had already been on staff, and I've said this from the beginning, I don't know what it is, but Sean Nua, I love watching the dude coach. I don't know why he hasn't had the greatest, success on the recruiting trail, and I don't know why his defensive line unit last year wasn't very successful. I mean, part of that's Don Brown's scheme, I think, and what he had his 4 down linemen do. But man, dude, like, I love watching the guy coach. First of all, he's
Yeah.
huge. He's a mountain of a dude. I mean, so he's out there. He played in the NFL. He's got a really good background. But he's always yelling. He's not yelling, always, well, yelling, but in a
Energy.
good way. He's
Yeah.
high energy, lots of encouragement, lots of coaching, technique stuff, and encouragement, and this and that, and being funny. He yelled at like one kid. He's like, "You got to be better than that. You got a different color shirt on, man. You got to be special." Like little
Right,
stupid
yeah.
thing like that. He was talking to Deion Walker a ton, the big time Cass Tech prospect that Michigan has been really active in recruiting over the last couple months. And I don't know, man. With Michigan, Jim Harbaugh essentially replaced his entire defensive staff except for Nua, and I get why when I watch him.
Yeah.
I just don't know why it hasn't really turned into much, more success on the recruiting trail and on the field. So it's going to be interesting to see how that group looks this year with a new scheme and a new guy calling plays and Mike McDonald. But I've seen him around at a lot of different stuff before, and every time I have, I like what I see. It's strange that it hasn't really added up necessarily on the field. And then obviously the head man, Jim Harbaugh's there. He shows up. He's in great spirits. He was smiling a lot. You said it. He looks like he's shedded a few pounds. Looked like he was having a really good time. I heard him mention multiple recruits by first name on site. So he knows. He knows the guys from West Bloomfield. He knows the guys from Cass Tech. He obviously knows like Dante Moore, the top flight quarterback in 2023 from Detroit Martin Luther King. He was snapping those names off left and right as he was bumping into these guys. Then he gave his speech, which I think was bad. I mean, I think it was kind of embarrassing. He's doing the "who's got it better than us" thing. Had to say it 3 or 4 times because the kids didn't really respond and didn't have much energy with it. And if you want to answer the question, like a lot of people do, so it's just kind of a weird trope that he's still holding on to. And I know it's a thing that goes way back to his childhood, but like you actually recorded it and did the write-up, and I know you kind of felt like the same way. Like overall, Harbaugh looked like he was having a really good time, but that speech, man, I don't know. It didn't do a whole lot for me.
Well, I mean, I was in the gym when he was giving it, and I've seen some reports that there was all eyes were on Harbaugh, and there was super high energy, and maybe I was not all that in tune. I didn't get that sense. I didn't get that feeling. But I will say, to his credit, when it comes to the "who's got it better than us" stuff, he was talking about how good it was to just camp is kicking off. We're all here together. We've got today, and it's like who's got it better than we do, sort of thing. But given everything that's taken place during the first 6 years, it does come off as a little bit tone deaf. Given it's just you're heading into another big pivotal year, and we all know what the records are, and everything with Ohio State, and so I think a lot of Michigan fans are turned off to that saying at this point. But he's still a guy, man, that like you could tell the recruits wanted to be around him. Now, granted, he was like the only big-time coach that was there. You didn't have like a Ryan Day walking around campus, and I didn't even think. Did Mel Tucker stick around? I didn't see him.
I saw him later on down by the main field.
You did see him?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I didn't see him when we were in the gym in there when Harbaugh was in there, though.
But I can tell you that there was no shortage of recruits trying to get within the vicinity of Jim Harbaugh to like get their name out there, shake his hand, say who they were, and he had his pen and paper with him, and I saw him writing down names and writing down information the whole time. And so, I think everything that he did that day was great. If the records were different, if the results were different, people would look at like if he did everything the exact same way he did up at Ferris, but the results and the record were different, people would view it differently, I guess is what I'm trying to get at, if that makes sense. And so
it does.
I didn't really take too much of an issue with it, but yeah, it's, the "who's got it better than us" stuff is just a little bit tough for a Michigan fan to hear that right now.
You're exactly right, though, and I think that's important to point out is that whenever he says that, he's not just talking about like Michigan football. He's like,
Right.
Especially in that setting, it was like almost like a mantra for the day or for life almost.
Yeah.
Like we're getting back to normal a little bit. We can play football again. We still have football. We have our health. The people that were there. I mean, he is big on stuff like that. He always has been. He's not as active on Twitter anymore with with certain sayings and different things that he puts out there, but that's always been kind of a part of his deal. And so I think that is important to make. I personally, if I were him, given what you talked about, the records and what's coming up this season, and everybody's always watching and everybody's always looking to to take a shot where one is there, like just don't say that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like, your speech could be really good without saying that. And like I said, most of the kids there didn't even know what they were supposed to do when he says that because like, they
Right.
haven't been around him before. So he had to say it, 3 or 4 or 5 times or whatever it was. And I
Yeah.
don't know. I just think it kind of runs its course a little bit at that point. But overall, like I said, he seemed to have pretty good energy. He was happy. He was definitely plugged in with like Will Johnson and
Yep.
other commits and the big time targets that Michigan
Deion
is
Walker.
yeah, the big time targets that Michigan is active with, like Deion Walker, he was around them all day, and that goes a long way, I think, with those kids when they're like, dang, that's still Jim Harbaugh, that's still the head coach at Michigan, and he knows my name and he's right here. Actually, it was really funny. I haven't put this write-up yet, but Tayshaun Trent, who's committed to Michigan and has been for a while, went to the Detroit Day recruiting visit on would have been Wednesday, right? The day before the camp.
Yeah.
And I asked him, how did that go? What was it like? He's like, man, I walked in and Jim Harbaugh just came up to me and like knew my name. And I'm like, you're committed to them, like I would say,
Yeah.
I would hope you, but you forget like these guys haven't seen the coaches in person before in a lot of cases
Right.
because there's been a campus shutdown for 15 months, and they're still like 16, 17, 18-year-old kids who's getting, first name recognized by a guy like Jim Harbaugh. So the buzz and the glow isn't there like it was when he was hired, but it's still there.
It's still there,
Michigan,
yeah.
and he still draws some people in. And like you said, it was pretty noticeable from all across the gym.
I was gonna say, like, even like that feeling you get with a guy like Clinkscale, like Jim Harbaugh still has that. It's not what it was when he arrived in 2015, but when he walks into the area, everybody knows he's there.
Yeah.
He's just one of those guys where he's still got that something about him. Played at a high level in college, played in the NFL, coached in the NFL. He's had a lot of success in football, and that's not lost on anyone.
Yep, no doubt about it. No doubt about it. Well, after he got done with his speech, after Harbaugh got done with his speech up front and was talking to some recruits and doing some things like that, he was kind of cornered by cornered by the media a little bit. I don't know if it was something he wanted to avoid or if he was just kind of being nice for a second and decided that he would talk, because sometimes he opts not to speak to the media, but in this case he was kind of cornered a little bit, and he was obviously asked about the Bo Schembechler stuff. Everybody, including Jim Harbaugh, everybody knew that the first time there was a microphone in front of him, that was going to come up, and it
Yeah.
did. And I don't know. I don't know if he answered it necessarily as good as he should have. I'm trying to pull it up and play it here so we can take a look at it. I don't know if I'm going to be able to or not because it's through it's through Twitter. I don't know if I can. I think I can get to it. Let me see. But at the end of the day, he was asked about it. He kind of spoke his mind on what he thought was I'm trying to think of the right way to put it. He said what he believes, I think, and what he feels based on his interactions with Jim Harbaugh or with Bo Schembechler from back in the day, and I just don't know if it was really handled the way that it should have been handled. So we'll kind of watch this real quick and see how that goes. We'll see if I can get this to play and be able to hear it. All right, so is that still playing? I'm trying to feel if it is. Okay, I think we're. Hopefully the audio came through. I think that's the first time we've done like an audio thing, so hopefully
Yeah.
that came through for people listening. I guess we'll find that out. But if it didn't, basically Harbaugh just said, Bo Schembechler never said anything. He wasn't a procrastinator. If he took care of it before the sun went down, some descriptive types of things about how Bo went about his business, basically. And I just think, I mean, it's fine if he believes that, and I know he looks up to Bo in a major, major way, and he was like a second dad to him, probably based on, the things he said about him in the past. I just feel like that probably wasn't the best thing to say. I just feel like he didn't he didn't make any mention of like the report or the victims or what.
Yeah.
I just feel like by leaving that out, you're kind of disregarding what the actual issue is, and that's. I mean, he could have been. It probably media people wouldn't have liked it, and everybody would have criticized it. But if he had just said, "I'd rather really not talk about that right now," that probably would have been better than what he did say. Honestly.
Yeah. Well, it was certainly a missed opportunity, and it's surprising given how much time I guess he's had to prepare for that question, knowing that question was coming. To not even, and he came at it from somebody who, you're right, looks at Bo as like a father figure, from somebody who was a big part of his life. And obviously he wants to, just in his nature to come to the defense of Bo Schembechler, but to not even mention the flip side of it, that, hundreds and hundreds of kids went through this and it was something absolutely terrible, to not even like acknowledge that or mention that in the first statement you were going to make. I feel like it was definitely a missed opportunity for Harbaugh, and I'm surprised he didn't go there, like I said, given how much time he's had to prepare for a question that he knew was coming.
Knew it was coming. There's no doubt about it. I mean, like, I don't know. It wasn't handled the worst way possible. He didn't come right out and deny it and say like,
and he was very careful. That's the guy I know. He kept saying that's the man I know, leaving the door open for like, yeah, sure, there's shit I don't know, but the guy I know, like I think a lot of people that are connected to people who have done some not so great things, and you would never expect that. Be like, I would have never guessed that person could do that.
It's every instance in the history of time, just about when somebody does something unexpected or tragic or unfortunate. They'll interview somebody and they'll say, "I never saw it coming." I mean, that was I sat by that kid every day, or whatever the situation is, whether it's like again horrible things that happen, a shooting or a murder or whatever. I mean, like they ask people around that person, and you get these kinds of stories all the time. So yeah, I agree with what you're saying, but I think everybody who watched it kind of did like a little bit of like you just kind of had that feeling like, oh, I don't know if he said quite enough, or maybe he said too much in the wrong direction. Like I said, if he had just pled the fifth, people wouldn't have liked that, but there would have been no criticism of it, I guess, at that point.
Yeah, so, I don't have any issue with what he said about Schembechler, because I do believe that was his experience with him, and he said what his experience was.
It's just that he missed the other stuff.
To leave out such a big part of that story, like I said, I think was a missed opportunity, and there's a lot of, former Wolverines who were just as dedicated and just as much a part of the program as Schembechler and Harbaugh was, that I think, it's not just because they were Wolverines that they deserve to be recognized. Everybody does. But, it just seemed like a missed opportunity, and we'll leave it at that.
Yep, I agree. It's going to continue to be a thing. I mean, I think until there's some form of resolution, though, whether it is the statue maybe coming down or renaming the hall, or if Harbaugh has a more pronounced statement, like it's going to continue coming up. I mean, so we'll see. We'll see when the next time is and what the next thing is that he says. But it's not going to go away just because it's taking a little bit of time. So anyway, back over to the football side of things a little bit. I kept mentioning Will Johnson, Michigan's gem of the 2022 class, an absolute star at cornerback for Grosse Pointe South. We saw him in person, tall, rangy, great build, can add a lot of muscle to his frame. Really smooth. He didn't, in the individual portion, he didn't go through one-on-ones. Instead, use that time to hang out with Jim Harbaugh and hang out with Steve Clinkscale and hang out with Josh Gaddis, even though he was just around like the whole staff at that point when they were doing the one-on-one drills towards the end of the camp, and he just had a ton of time to talk with them and talk with other commits and talk with other targets, and he was just really active in everything that was going on. His dad is one of the people who kind of helps put this camp on. Deion Johnson, Curtis Blackwell, co-founders of Sound Mind, Sound Body. So anyway, he kind of knows the ins and outs, and obviously he's going to be there, but he didn't go through one-on-ones. It got interesting at the end when Dante Williams showed up. That is USC's cornerbacks coach, who flew all the way to Michigan just to hang out with Will Johnson at this camp. And And they did. They hung out quite a bit, and you could tell that they were close, and you could tell that they had a really good rapport. They were talking and laughing and kind of spending time together, all while Michigan's coaches are standing within 3 feet away, kind of looking over at them like, "The hell are you doing, dude? Like, get out of here," type of thing. He's got this official visit to USC coming up, and I know Michigan fans across the scope are saying, it doesn't mean anything. It does, man. It does mean something. Now, I will say, after talking to Will and just thinking about the situation as it is anyways, I'd still put money on him signing with Michigan. That's the most likely scenario. I think it does make the most sense, but I still think that there's a lot of validity to why he's taking the visit and his connection to Coach Williams, his connection to Damani Jackson, who's committed out there. I don't know. That part was really interesting to see when you've got two enemy coaching staffs essentially at this point recruiting one high profile recruit like within a couple feet of each other. It was kind of fun to watch, actually.
Yeah, and I was watching it from the press box, so I remember I was almost like radioing down to you on the field. I'm like, okay, Johnson's here, and coaches are over here, and I could kind of see what was going on, and it's unfortunate. I get why we didn't see Johnson in the one-on-ones. I think he had a track meet or something that he was preparing for.
That's right.
The next day, so he didn't participate in the one-on-ones. But just from what we could see, looks like an impressive dude. Like you said, he's tall, he's lanky, he's got room to add some muscle, and we talked about this before. You would obviously prefer he not take a visit out to USC, but I don't know how much of that is going to sway him. I think right now he's all in on Michigan. I think it's not going to be a visit to USC that really tips the scales. I think it's going to be, how does Michigan look in 2021 and what do they do on the field? And a guy like Will Johnson wants to play football at the highest level and on the biggest stage in Michigan, and that's why it's so unfortunate. That last game in November is such a pain in the ass because Michigan hasn't proven that they have the ability to get to the next level where a guy like a Will Johnson or some of these top-rated recruits want to come here and say, okay, we can get to the biggest stage. So, I think a lot, and I think he even acknowledged it to you, right? He said it's obviously important that Michigan has a good season, and I think that's kind of where we're all at. They have to have a good season, and if they want guys like Will Johnson to commit and stay committed and ultimately arrive on campus, they got to take care of business on the field. That is the biggest and best recruiting tool they have. Succeed on the field. Everything else that Michigan has going for them will take care of itself.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, National Signing Day is somewhere in mid-December. I was trying to look up the exact date. I know it's fallen on like December 19th, 20th, so somewhere around there. So that means Michigan will have 12 games in the books before these guys can put pen to paper. If they play 12 games and they're at 4-8, 5-7, 6-6, it's going to be hard to hang on to a guy like Will Johnson who wants to, like you said, play at the highest level and win. Now, I will say this. He said some really encouraging things to me after he said, yes, it's obvious that they have to have a good year. He said something along the lines of, and I put this up yesterday, so you can go to WolverineDigest.com and check that out, his exact quotes. He said something along the lines of, I have been around the program. I know the ins and outs. I know what's wrong and what needs to be corrected. I really like the talent in the 2021 class, and I know the guys we're trying to get in 2022, we can help make it better. After hearing him say all of that stuff, that's why I went out and said, like, look, I still don't think that the USC official visit is meaningless, but I think it's going to be really hard for Michigan to lose him. I just do. His dad played there. He's a home state kid. The best players in Michigan go to Michigan. He's at the forefront of that recruiting push. He's coming back every weekend, essentially, to hang out with guys that Michigan's trying to land. He's in people's ears trying to make sure that they realize what Michigan can offer. That speaks volumes to me. I'm still not saying that USC has zero chance and that the visit means nothing, but I think he's the kind. I've said this before. He's a layup. He is a recruiting layup for Michigan. He's the kind of guy that they have to be able to, like you said, get to commit, stay committed, and sign when December rolls around. And winning will certainly make that a lot easier. Like if they win maybe even 8 games, 9, 10 games, it'll be case closed. It'll be no thought, no pause, no second guessing, nothing at all. He'll be ready to sign and it'll be over with. But if they have a really bad season, he's going to have some things to think about, and he might still stay with Michigan because it just makes the most sense all the way around. So,
but that's why you take your visit to USC, right?
So
if things go that way, you know what you have in a USC.
Yep,
So
that's exactly it. So that's why it doesn't mean anything. I still think at the end of the day he stays with Michigan, but they gotta do it on the field. They gotta do it on the field so that guys like Will Johnson stay committed, and like some of these other top targets they have realize that there's some positive trajectory and that things are moving in the right direction. That's going to be key because they, like you said, everything else they have, the stadium, the tradition, the resources, the nutrition, the help, the academic assistance, the brand as name, image, and likeness becomes more of a thing.
yeah,
I mean, and now the staff in place, they're all like, from what I understand, just about all of them are like plus recruiters. So they got everything working in their favor to bring these guys in and get them signed. But again, you got to do it on the field. Top
yeah,
flight players don't want to come play for 500 teams. They
right.
just don't. So I thought it was really interesting. Will's a great kid. I've had a chance to talk to him quite a few times now at this point. The recruiting stuff never stops for guys that are that good, and he's just a really nice kid to talk to. And like I said, after getting done with him, we listened to the interview and we both kind of said, like, it sounds pretty good.
Yeah.
That sounds pretty good for Michigan. Actually, I know that visit's coming up, but he's saying a lot of the right things right now, and that's really all you can ask for as we sit here at the beginning of June. More than 6 months away from signing day. Michigan in the mix, man, for another hefty defensive tackle. They've got one in Jordan Whitley, who was a transfer from Oregon State, trying to go back to the Pac-12 again and get another transfer defensive tackle from USC. Jay Toia was high on Michigan through his recruiting process, and now I believe is in Ann Arbor as we speak, or maybe was. I mean, he's taking his visit right now, and it sounds like Michigan is leading the charge there. I don't know. I mean, I didn't know that they would go after two guys like this for defensive tackle, but I guess that sounds like obviously something they really thought they needed to do. So, I mean,
Yeah.
on the surface, does this make you think like, dang, they really don't like the defensive interior linemen they have?
Yeah.
Or is it just like they just need more bodies and they need some bigger guys because of the shift?
Well, I kind of go back and forth between those two things, right? Like I'm like, I like that they're going after more guys and they're adding some depth to the defensive line, but then I'm also like, there's another part of me that's like, well, shit, like they're really trying to stack up on defensive linemen. Like, what does that say about the group that's there?
Yeah.
But I think part of the reason my mind goes there is just because I'm, I kind of know how things go, and the defense has been struggling, and so your mind automatically goes there. Bottom line, they're loading up on guys that are 300 plus. You know what Whitley is. I mean, he's damn near pushing 400 pounds.
At one point, anyway. We don't know.
At one point, yeah, he might be in better shape at this point. I would expect him to be in better shape by the time the season comes around. But hey, man, as far as I'm concerned, you can never have too many defensive linemen. And if they can just be shifting some of these guys in and out, and make no mistake, they've still got some talent up front. I know we haven't seen Mozzie Smith really come out yet. I know Chris Hinton has really got a huge upside. So they've got some guys there on the defensive line that I think are going to be pretty stellar this upcoming season. I have no issue with them adding some depth because I really think they're going to need it. And, heaven forbid you have a massive injury on that defensive line. You're going to need some of those bigger bodies to come in and play some substantial minutes. So I'm all for it.
You do need it. Defensive line is absolutely the most heavily rotated position in football. So
Yeah.
maybe running back also in there, but defensive line, I mean, you literally have different packages where it might be 4 different guys that aren't on the field to start the game. I mean, you've got to have bodies in there. It's a physical, tough position to play. They are going, I mean, absolutely all out on every snap. It's not like receiver where you can kind of jog off the line or something on a handoff play, or when the ball's not coming to you, you can take a quick breather. Like there really isn't any of that on the D line. So yeah, you got to have bodies there. And I agree with you, man. I've been high on, obviously he's a 5-star kid, but been high on Chris Hinton since the day he picked Michigan, and he played a lot of football last year. Mozzie Smith, not quite there yet. I mean, I saw him in high school, thought he was super talented. At times he could dominate a game, but even in high school at sometimes he would kind of disappear a little bit or take a series off, and you just typically don't see that with guys that are that physically talented. And look how it's played out at Michigan so far. He's barely been on the field. So the talent's there. Maybe the conditioning hasn't been. I know he's like a struggles with asthma too. I know that was an issue for him in high school. Don't know how that's been doing for him at Michigan. But anyway, talented kid, big body kid. Both of those guys are over 300 pounds, but neither of them are 350, 360
Right.
like Whitley is. But I believe Toia was listed at around
315.
yeah, just a little above
Yeah.
300. So he's a slight upgrade at the true nose tackle position, I would say, over Mozzie Smith and Chris Hinton. But
Still a big dude.
still a
big dude. Yeah.
absolutely a big dude, and still has a lot of eligibility left too. So if Michigan,
It's weird.
there,
I didn't realize that he was I didn't know much about him until his name came up and it looked like Michigan might be in pursuit. Didn't realize he only spent a semester out at USC. I didn't realize he was a USC commit. So he goes in for the spring. He participates in spring ball and he's out already. And in the article I put up, he said a lot of that was due to the COVID-19 pandemic and that he felt like he didn't have the opportunity to take the visits he wanted to take and kind of get around the country and see some other opportunities. And so apparently Michigan was one of those big ones, and from what it sounds like, everything's going pretty well, and I don't know. We'll see what happens.
I mean, this is another recruit, essentially. I mean,
Yeah.
like he's an early enrolled freshman, like J.J. McCarthy is, or like
Right.
Donovan Edwards is. So yeah,
So it's not like this is a dude that was 4 years at another program and couldn't get off the ground. Like this was a fairly highly rated recruit that spent the spring at USC and decided, you know what, I want to see some other things.
yeah, that's not typically how it plays out, but it's a unique situation that would give him a lot of time left, all of his time left to play at Michigan, especially with the changing of the rule where. I mean, the COVID year kind of added to that, but now it's an official rule where guys can transfer and play right away, and they don't miss
Yeah.
out on a year of eligibility. So yeah, that's an interesting thing. It doesn't happen that way usually, and I didn't even realize that. I was looking for photos of him, and I'm like, why? Like, there's no pictures of this guy in his USC uniform. Like,
Right.
oh, it's because he's never had it on in any public scope anyway. I don't know if he, what they did while he was there, but anyway, yeah, it's an interesting development and would certainly add another big body to a room that could use it. So I'm all for it. I don't know. I don't know a whole lot about him. I remember when he was a recruit, but vaguely. And now that he's potentially going to end up at Michigan, we'll take a deeper dive into what exactly he brings to the table skill wise. But you see 6'2", 315, and freshman. Why not, man?
Yeah.
Why not see what he can bring to the table at Michigan? Switching over to basketball a little bit, man. Juwan Howard, another coaching job, another day, another mention of him to be a coach in the NBA. We talked about this a lot the other day with the Boston job that I think is one of the better jobs that will come open in maybe several seasons, just given the fact that they've been one of the better teams in the East, a lot of young talent, a superstar in Jason Tatum. It's the Celtics. Really smart dude in Brad Stevens and some continuity there since he's been there. But now the Trailblazers job has opened up, and they're another really good team with some good players. I mean, you got
Dame time.
Yeah, Damian Lillard, one of my favorite players in the league. CJ McCollum, some nice young talent there as well. It's just going to keep happening. I mean, out of those two jobs, I think the Boston job is better. So I don't think this is like, oh, look out for Portland now. There's even another angle, but it's not going to go away. It's not going to go away.
Yeah, like I said before, get used to it. I saw that his name started to pop up with the Blazers job, and I mean that one didn't even really I saw it, and then I don't know, I was probably looking at my phone and eating cheese puffs, and I saw it, and then keep scrolling because it didn't even register. I don't think Boston, that's a different animal, right? We talked about the history with Boston and kind of what that franchise is within the NBA. Portland's not that. I know they've got some great players, but I think it's going to really, really take not just a special opportunity in the NBA to get Howard out of Ann Arbor, but I think he's got some things here first that he wants to accomplish, and he's got some, he's got one son on the roster, another one likely on the way, and I just think there's too much work left undone here to say, you know what, I kind of, because his stock has really elevated since he came to Michigan. He's become a hot commodity, and to just sort of up and leave after an Elite Eight appearance, that being the height of it, to me it doesn't seem like that's how this story is going to go.
Yeah, and let's be clear about this. So the buzz around Boston, the buzz now around Portland is from a media person.
Yeah.
But it's just like you or I. They're not just gonna spout off and say something for the hell of it. These guys are they're good at their jobs. They know what they're doing. And if they're gonna say that Juwan Howard's name is somebody that should be looked at, then there's probably a reason for that. They're not just they're not just arbitrarily throwing out a successful college
Right.
coach's name. Like they've got their sources, they've got their people they talk to in the offices of all the NBA teams. So it's
It's
not like we've heard officially Portland has extended an offer or is bringing Juwan Howard in for an interview. But if a guy like Jeff Goodman or a guy like Woj is going to throw something out there, there's a reason for it. They've probably heard something, or they know that so and so at Portland has Juwan's name in a Rolodex, and if this opportunity came up, that he was going to be contacted. So, there's nothing to be worried about, but there's a reason why these guys' names are brought up.
Yeah, I mean, it's clear that there is a belief out there that Howard's desire is ultimately to return to the NBA, and so
I,
as long as as long as an opening comes up, Howard's name will be mentioned. That's just the way it's going to be.
I wonder. Well, I really do wonder about that. There's no question before he got to Michigan that was a million% his goal. Be an
Yeah,
NBA head coach. He was grinding and learning the ways with Miami. I think his name was brought up. I don't remember if he interviewed or not. I'd have to double check on that. But I know the Timberwolves job. He was linked most closely to that job, whatever it was, a season or two before he came to Michigan, or maybe even that season. I can't remember. So it's obvious and it's clear that at that time he aspired to be a head coach in the NBA. And I mean that's pretty obvious. Like if you're an assistant coach in the NBA, you want to be a head coach at some point. Now that he's the head
right.
coach at Michigan, and Michigan means so much to him, and like you said, Jace is there, and Jet's probably coming. I wonder how much like that has shifted. Like before NBA head coach was way up there, top tier. Like that's my
Yeah.
goal, that's my job, that's what I want to do. And now that Michigan is where he's at, I wonder how much that's come down, or if it's still way up at the top, but not right now. Those are questions I would love to ask him in a in an off the record setting,
Yeah.
because he's never going to talk about that at a press conference. I don't think. But we talked about all the reasons the other day that would make an NBA job so attractive, even if you are at your quote unquote dream college job.
Yeah.
It's still the highest level. It's still a lot more money. It's still more professional. There's no recruiting. You're not. I mean, there are reasons why an NBA job would ultimately be much better than a college job.
Yeah. And maybe I'm naive in this, but we talked about it a little bit before, and I just think Juwan Howard has so much to offer that at the college level that he can't really offer. Not to say he can't offer it, but it won't make as big of an impact at the NBA level. He just seems like a bit of a different breed, where he was like built to like be a mentor for like even when he was with the Fab Five. We talked about this, I think, in the last podcast.
Yeah.
He was like the guy that was like sort of like acting as a father figure to the rest of that group.
They would like tease him about it.
Correct, yeah,
Like
and
the old guy, the old head in the group.
exactly,
Yeah.
and it just seems like he's made for being around college athletes who still have a lot to figure out about life, and serving as like that figure is like, I'm a great resource for all these things. And he seems to like not just be really good in that role, but to really enjoy that role. Like if you sit in on a press conference and you listen to and I know a lot of coaches talk about how much they love their players and the relationship they have, but when he says it, when he talks about it, it comes off a little bit differently. You can tell it's genuine. And I think there are a lot of aspects that he enjoys about the college game that he wouldn't necessarily get at the NBA level. So even if the money is different, it might be one of those things where, not to get too cliche, but it's a higher calling in terms of what he wants to do with his life, staying at the collegiate level.
Yeah, a lot of coaches can say it, and it can be lip service, but it's his reputation preceded him in
Yeah.
that area, like you said, even going back to when he was just a kid as a member of the Fab Five, to his reputation as an NBA player, and his attention to detail, and how he really does take everything that he does very seriously, and that's a big part of it, is being a father figure, a mentor, a life coach, or whatever you want to call it, whatever title you want to throw on it. He's really good at it, and he does seem to get a lot of a reward from that money just doesn't give you. I mean, and like
Yeah.
there probably is some validity to, like, he doesn't need the money. This dude's made a ton of cash over the course of his career, but like, dude, anybody who's got a job and then you get an offer to triple or quadruple it, it's gonna grab you. It's going to grab you, and you have to take it seriously and look at it. So we'll see how that plays out. Every time an NBA job opens up, he's going to be brought up because it's
Get used to it.
It's 2 for 2 so far, right? Boston has a job. Oh, there's Juwan
Yeah.
Howard's name. Now Portland, and there he is again. So we'll see what ends up happening. I mean, like, one of the things keeping him in Michigan too is he's done a freaking awesome job on the recruiting trail, and guys are coming in that are going to make his team, potentially more talented than they were last year even, and he's not slowing down in that regard. Caleb Houston, Gatorade Player of the Year down at Montverde Academy, one of the most loaded programs in the entire country, and I think he's going to start next year. I think it just works out perfectly for his skill set. He's 6'8", 6'9", kind of a versatile wing guy like Franz Wagner. Not exactly the same as Franz, more of a I would classify him as more of a shooter, probably not quite as effective on the defensive end in terms of like altering and blocking shots. Franz just seemed to have a knack for that, the big broad shoulders, super long. I don't quite get that sense from Houston, but again, he's finishing high school still. Like Franz wasn't that when he first came out, and he really wasn't even that as a freshman. He really kind of stepped into that as a sophomore. But I mean, dude, the way Juwan's been killing it on the recruiting trail, there's a lot of reasons why he can look down at his roster and be like, I think I'm gonna stick around for a little bit. I mean, that's hard to walk away from that.
It's funny, in all the things I rattled off there about why he would want to stay at the collegiate level. I didn't even talk about like the fact that he's got a loaded recruiting class coming in, and they're probably going to be another favorite to make a deep run in the tournament, win a conference championship, and so. Yeah, I mean, this is another one of those kids that looks like, he's highly talented. Obviously, he can put on some weight, some muscle in college, but Juwan's got some top guys coming in, and I just don't think he's going to be in any hurry to go anywhere. I think it's like getting in. You got all these cool toys that are coming in, and you want to be able to use it and play with it, and like to just walk away from it. I don't know. None of it makes sense.
I'm telling you, dude, I've been really torn on my seasons on NCAA before. You get a good recruiting class, you get a new job offer, and I'm like, dude, I just spent all season recruiting that running back with 4.24 speed. Like, right. I want him. Hilarious, by the way, how many guys run a 4.24 on that game, because it's just not like a real thing. But
it's not all that common.
Yeah, Caleb Houston, I just looked it up, 6'8", 205, according to the 24/7 Sports Composite. He's the number 7 player in the country, man. He's a stud. And then you've got Moussa Diabate, and you've got the 2 guards, Kobe Buffkin and Frankie Collins, and then Isaiah Barnes and Will. I mean, you've got a lot of. Might have said Isaiah Barnes' name twice. I don't even know right there. You've got a 6-man class that was the number 1 group in the country. That's pretty appealing to a coach who spent a ton of time trying to convince those guys to come to Michigan, and then got their signature, and now they're just about to be on campus and starting to work out over the summer, and like now your name's popping up for these NBA jobs. So yeah, I think Juwan actually commented on Caleb Houston winning Gatorade Player of the Year.
Said something to the effect that he couldn't wait to have him.
Exactly.
Was excited to get started. So to me, I feel like this guy is just like, I think Harbaugh used to say it, like a pig in slop or something like that when he first got to Ann Arbor, like enjoying it that much. I think that's the mode that Juwan Howard is in right now. He's just really having fun with it, enjoying it, and I think he's really excited to get this new class in.
I mean, I would be. I'm excited to see him. I mean, as soon as we started to learn about the futures of guys and what was happening, we're still, I guess, waiting a little bit on what's going on with Hunter Dickinson. I expect him back, but we don't know. Like we talked about before, if one team promises to take him in the first round, that's all it takes. So we'll see on that. But it's fun to think about what the starting lineup might look like, and when you've got these highly touted freshmen, like who's going to play a lot, who might even start. I think Houston is the one guy who, just because of his position, his skill set, and what Michigan has coming back, that he looks like a starter. I mean, to me, We'll see though. We'll see. There's some pretty capable and talented guys already on the roster before you even add this recruiting class in. So It's gonna be fun to watch, man. And Juwan's, he's got it humming, man. He's got it humming. Like I said last time, I'm very, very hopeful that he sticks around, because he's fun to cover, and the team is good, and recruiting is good, and everything that we do as a media person, there's a lot of storylines and a lot of potential to cover there, so it makes it fun, makes it more enjoyable. All right, as we get ready to wrap up, man, we only had a few questions, but we'll throw them up there. We'll talk about it a little bit, even the comments that don't really require us to talk on, we'll throw them up just for some recognition. So Go Blue from Tampa, from Eric there on Facebook. Go Blue from Port Orchard, Washington, beat the Huskies, man. So that's going to be, we come back to that game all the time, man. Week 2, it's going to be a big one. Marco with a go blue. That sounds like we had some Kool-Aid. Chris admits to maybe a shot of it.
At least.
No, it was fun to see the coaches in person, and it reinforced and confirmed some of the good things I had heard about them. I guess that's where I'll leave it. I didn't come away thinking like, oh my God, they're amazing, best staff in the country. I'm not ready to say that.
But it's I think you could make a strong case that it's one of the best staffs in the country. And I mean, but you're going to get that with Michigan, with a program like Michigan anyway. It's just the guys that they assemble are pretty damn good.
Yeah, pretty good ones in there. Can we get to 8 or 9 wins this year? What do we think? Well, Chris thinks so, right?
I've got them at 9.
I got them at 7, so I mean, it's not like I'm very far off of that pace.
Yeah.
I
mean,
think
they can certainly get to it. It's just a matter of things have to go the right way, and they've got to show up in instances where they normally don't show up, and week 2 is a big one of those.
8 wins would piss me off so much. I mean,
you would be so torn. You would be torn.
I mean, at 8 wins, you can't pound the table that a change needs to happen.
Yeah.
But it's not good enough to really be like happy about, especially if you throw in maybe a bad loss to Ohio State, and if Michigan goes 8-4, then the 4 losses are very likely to 4 teams that have a pulse, and then they got 8 wins against quote unquote scrub teams. I mean, what does that do for you? So can they get to 8 or 9? I mean, I think probably they're talented enough to beat 8 teams on their schedule, but what is that like? Is that good? Is that where you think they should be? I don't know. I think if 8-4 ultimately ends up being the record, I'm just going to be like, what do we do? What are we doing here? What are they doing there? Like, what's going to happen now?
Well,
all these changes, all this stuff, and that's where you're at, I guess.
And 8-4 becomes 8-5, right? When you throw the bowl game in, because that's just the way it goes. So yeah.
I don't know. We'll see what ends up happening. This is a good question. I like this one. I'm assuming they're talking football. This is going back a little ways when I think we were still talking about football stuff.
Yeah.
Who is the player that has the biggest surprise success this season, Chris? You got a off the top of the dome answer?
I don't know
question?
If it's going to be a surprise. Like for me, it won't be a surprise, but I would say Blake Corum. He had, based on what he did his freshman year, there wasn't a ton of production that's there. He is like, if I have a list of guys that I think are going to step up and show out in 2021, he's at the very top of the list. And then there's like 2 blank spots below him, and then you can start to pencil some guys in. I just think the way he works, the way he's built, and if Mike Hart can find a way to utilize these guys, I feel like he's primed for a monster season.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't know if that would be a surprise, really. He's going to be, running back 1 or 1A, or I mean, I don't know how exactly the rotation is going to be between him and Hassan Haskins, but he's going to play a lot. He's talented. I mean, if they can figure out how to use him, I think he should have a good year. I'll go Eric All. I mean, I love his upside. I love his talent. I think he had a few drops last year, but the way the coaches talk about him, they think he could be like all world. So he was clearly behind Nick Eubanks last year. He's going to be the top tight end on the roster this year, with not a whole lot of depth backing him up. So I expect him to play a lot. And depending on with either quarterback, they're both kind of billed as really accurate, not necessarily push the ball down the field in a big way kind of guys. So that screams tight end to me all day. So we'll see how that ends up looking. I think Eric All is really good. He just hasn't had a chance to really showcase it yet, but he probably will this year. Same question from Dave Carr here. How many games will Michigan win this year? I say 7, you say 9. And we'll see if that ends up changing as we move a little bit forward. And one last Go Blue from Richmond, Virginia. And Jason Scott. So there are our questions for tonight. Appreciate all of you guys who decided to tune in and throw us some questions and have some discussion with us a little bit. Quite a bit of stuff we covered this time. I know sometimes we have 3 or 4 topics and we just get a little long-winded. I think we had 6 things to talk about this time. So that's always good. And there will continue to be more as visits take place and as Michigan is conducting some camps, and we continue to try to get out and go to some stuff, which we will be doing again on, is it Monday? We got a camp coming up at Wayne State, so we'll see some more players from the Detroit area and a couple more coaches out there, so we will bring that to you Hopefully on Monday. I think that's another late camp though, so we'll have to see how that goes. I think it
3 to
starts at
8.
3 or yeah. There you go.
Yeah.
So we'll see how that goes. We'll try to maybe get something up on Monday. If not, we'll push it back to Tuesday again, and we'll talk about that camp and anything else that happens between now and then. So be back here Monday or Tuesday. Thanks everybody for listening, and we will be. Also, wow, there was one other thing I wanted to say. I made a note of it, and now I can't freaking remember what it was. We're going to leave it there. We'll leave it there. I'm not going to talk about it anymore. Thanks to everybody for listening. We'll be back on Monday or Tuesday.